Right, our next... Oh, he's here. It's Rob Allen. It's his first time.
So I'm going to talk about climate change. You guys probably know climate change is happening. Probably know that humans are causing climate change. I think no one in this room probably needs to be reminded about that. But we've actually done it before, and a lot of people don't know that, and the science is actually starting to realize this for the first time. And the story starts here, of the last time we changed the climate. When we think about when we think about the Native Americans before Columbus, we often think about something like this. But it really couldn't be more wrong. Native Americans weren't nomadic. They lived in dense, settled societies, often more dense than in Western Europe. They didn't have horses. The Spanish brought them. They lived in settlements like this, dense towns. You could see several towns from each town. So there were loads of them, and they were agricultural societies. But they didn't clear land with oxen and plows. They cleared it by burning vast acres of forest every year to clear agricultural land because they didn't have oxen. This wasn't a primitive form of agriculture by any means. It was actually a really complex land management system, and it actually enabled really high population densities, even in places that today are only lightly inhabited, like the Amazon basin or the southeastern United States. But then this guy rocked up, Christopher Columbus. Now, if anyone's ever warranted the title of walking ecological disaster, then it's Christopher Columbus. When he arrived in Mexico, Mexico had double the population of Spain and Portugal combined, where Columbus had come from. And he brought with him a kaleidoscope of deadly diseases. The natives obviously had no immunity to these diseases, so it killed hundreds of millions of people. The Inca Empire, for example, was the biggest empire in the world at the time. There wasn't anything bigger than the Inca Empire. Within a few years of the Spanish arriving, it had been completely destroyed. Across the southeastern United States and the Amazon basin, there were dense agricultural societies with huge numbers of people. There were towns and cities in the Amazon with higher populations than London in 1400. These were big, populous, advanced societies, and they were almost completely wiped out by European diseases. Malaria was probably the biggest killer because these places were full of wet marshlands, tropical rainforests, where previously people had thrived, but now, because of malaria borne by mosquitoes, people were dying in massive numbers. So what happens when you kill hundreds of millions of people living in advanced, populous agricultural societies? It turns out the results actually show up in Icelandic ice cores. You see a big drop in the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere around the time that these diseases are sort of working their way into the population in these areas. So there's a bit of a time lag going on. It's a bit after the Spanish originally turned up. So why does this change the climate? Well, when the land is regularly burned, it's open, maybe patches of woodland, but mostly quite light scrubland. But then it becomes forest really quickly after it stops being burned. And then this affects global temperatures. So you can see here, there's a period which is called the Little Ice Age, where global temperatures become a lot colder. Global temperatures decrease by 1 degree. And that really, really changes just the course of human civilization. So that's the Thames in 1677. The Thames froze solid. Every year they held fairs on the Thames. Swiss villages in the Alps were destroyed by encroaching glaciers. And it was absolutely devastating. 10% of the population of most European countries died in famines in this period. 30% of the population of Finland died of famines in this period. So it's absolutely catastrophic for these societies. It was so cold that the King of Sweden marched an army from Sweden to Denmark for 3 days across what we think of as open ocean, but then was solid ice. He could march an army for days with cannons and trains of horses across open ocean because it was frozen solid. Similarly, the European population of Greenland, which had been introduced by the Vikings, completely died off. The Greenland became completely devoid of European settlement in this period. Russia expanded as a result of the Little Ice Age because there was so much demand for fur because people were so cold that they spread it east in the lookout for furry critters that people were wiping out from hunting. It was a truly global phenomenon. The Ming Dynasty in China also collapsed because of catastrophic flooding brought about by climate change. So what does this mean? Well, this is the graph of global CO2 levels now. You can tell that we've already changed it a hell of a lot more than we did in the past. Now, maybe we should learn something from the time we changed it before. We didn't know we were doing it at that time, but it had some pretty bad consequences. So maybe we should learn a little about that time and think, let's try not to do it again.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, you can see others on the Bettakultcha YouTube channel. Subscribe now and you'll be notified when new ones are uploaded.